Hello guys, it's Juan Herrera from Dork Entertainment, and in this tutorial we will be talking about motion graphics. So let's get started. Now, a few months ago I've created this intro that you just saw. It was a long update, but first let's go ahead and talk about what I used for that intro. Now, everything that you saw in that intro was some sort of graphic created here in Photoshop, and I'm using Photoshop CC 2014. Here's a few of the graphics, if not all of them, that I've used in that intro. Now, you have everything from all of the lights, all the little pieces that you put together. You got the circles, which I call them the icons. You have the boxes. Some are similar and some are different because I've changed some of the icons. You got the computer, and all of these graphics were its own layer. For example, the computer, these boxes were their own layer. These lines were their own layer. And I've just made them into one layer, because when you import them into After Effects, you don't want to have all those layers. So what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be doing a little bit of the intro that you just saw before this. The whole intro is basically the same. It's almost like a pattern, so we're not going to go ahead and do the whole intro because all the icons that you saw are basically the same steps as the first one. Now what we do is we create this transition with some lines, and you see a green screen because that's where I key out the video that you saw, whichever video that may be, that I used the intro on. So you see this transition, and it fills up the screen and it swoops it out and the intro hits. Now the first icon you see is the filmmaking, which has all the lights, and then here you see photography hits. It pans up and you see a flash, two flashes. The box icon I changed 2 times. And then you have unboxing and reviews, and then tutorials hit. And that file is actually missing, but as you saw, it was the Dork Entertainment logo. But right now I'm not too worried about it because this is just showing you what the timeline looks like and what everything kind of just looks like. After you see the logo hit, you see the transition again, and it swoops to the next part, which would be the green screen, which would be keyed out and replaced by whatever video that I'm using the intro in. So that's just a basic run through of what it looks like and what we'll be doing. So what you want to start out with is a new composition, and you want to make sure that it's 1080 by 1920 square pixels. I like to work with 24 frames per second or 23.976. Duration, we would just keep this at 20 seconds because this is what this intro is, and we'll just set it to black right now. Now the first thing was creating the transition. So the first thing you want to do is we can go ahead and create a solid, and since we used red and white, we'll just go ahead and use those also. Again, 1080 by 1920 square pixels. And what we did with this is we unlocked the scale because we don't want it to be square. And we're going to zoom out enough so whenever we rotate it, it doesn't end up cut off on the corners. So we'll go ahead and just make this about that size. It can be bigger, smaller, whatever you want. And I believe we used about the angle of 20, -20 if you want it facing the other way. And we're going to go ahead and make another solid. This time it's going to be white. And we're going to do the same thing. And we're going to take our scale and unlock it. We'll make it a little bit smaller. And we want to zoom this out. That way when we turn it on our rotation, which would be 20%, it'll match up with the other one. Now our scale, we just go ahead and move this up. Let's make the red a little bit bigger on our scale right here. Alright, we can go ahead and duplicate this layer. We're going to add another white one, and we're going to make this one a little bit bigger and move it down about here. And same with the red one, we're going to go ahead and duplicate that layer and make it a bit bigger too. And we'll put it right here. Okay, once you have your graphics laid out and you have them named, which I'm going to skip that part, but make sure you have your layers named, because if you don't, you mix them up, you might delete something that you might not want to. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and start keying these and bring them in and bring them out. Now what we did is we'll go ahead and start with the big red one, and we're going to be messing with the position and the scale, and we want to start off with the timeline at the beginning, and we want this off the screen because the imaginary video is playing right now. And there's a lot to play with. If you want the graphic to come in faster, then you want the keyframes to be closer together. And then if you want the graphic to come in slower, or maybe you want the graphic to come in fast and then go out slow, you want the keyframes to be in closer and farther for it to go out slower. So first we want the graphic to come in. Now when you hit the timer icon, it's going to set a keyframe, and we're just going to keep it like that for now. Now we'll go ahead and come in at 1 second, and now we're going to move our position about right here. And we're also going to mess with our scale. And since it's already huge, we're just going to scale it down a little bit. Alright, now we go back and play it back. Now you can see that the scale, it was very quick though, the scale went down along with the position. So what we're going to do is go ahead and keep it at 1 second. But we want to change the position to go from here, and then at 2 seconds we want it to go back. That's where the end of the transition will go, and the video will come in. And we'll mess with our scale again. We'll just put it right here, that way I can see it. And we'll make it a little bit skinnier, and then we'll drag the keyframe 2 seconds. Play it back. And you can see the scale change. Now, that was really fast because it was only 2 seconds and it was only 1. Now, for the sake of time, I'm only going to show you 2 of these. My normal intro, I have 4 or 5. But because of the time, it's going to take a long time showing you the same step that you do. Now, since this one came from the top, we're going to use the bigger white one to go the opposite way. So we want to start this one off the screen, and we'll go ahead and open up our properties. Again, timeline is at the beginning, position and scale is the 2 that we're going to be messing with, and we want to go ahead and we don't want to match this up with the same time that this hits at 1 second, so we'll just go back a little bit. We'll go 20 frames and we'll bring this up about right here, and then go up, and like I said, the keyframe automatically hits once you do 1 keyframe. And we'll go back here, let's see, right about there, and we'll go back. And then again, we'll go ahead and mess with the scale. That was just position. Keyframes for position is already set. So the scaling, we'll make this a little bit bigger. And then once we hit right here, we'll make it smaller. That's good. Now we look back what we did. It looks plain. The keyframing. These keyframes are just plain. And what I found out is when you mess with the kind of keyframe, it makes it look more interesting. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and go back to the red rectangle. And we're going to highlight all our keyframes. We're going to go to Keyframe Assistant, and we're going to go Easy Ease. And we're going to go ahead and do that with a white one too. Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And let's play it back. There's a difference. It looks the same, but it's not. Now with this, I'll show you what I mean. Let's go to the red. I'm going to go to this graph editor, and here you can see that these are the keyframes that you place. Now what it's basically telling you is it goes slow, fast, 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 slow. That's where that point hits, where it comes back, and you see this point right here is where that hits, and then it ends up going back. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do this, but if you want to experiment and play around with the speed, how far, how close each keyframe is, go ahead and do that. When I was doing my intro, that's what I was doing, playing with the speed. And one interesting thing is I found out is whenever I pull this middle one back, and I'll do this one too, when it looks like this, it makes the graphic look even more interesting. You see that? Basically what it's telling the graphic to do is to speed up really fast, and then it takes longer to slow down. And then it's going to hit really fast, and when it goes off screen, it's going to slow down. Now you can see that. And if we move to the white one, let's go ahead and go to our timeline, and we're going to mess with the white one. Now, don't forget, this is called Graph Editor. When you can see the graph, you don't have to have the graph look like this. You can mess with the speed too, anything. If you want to keep it like that, and not all graphics work with this, but I like doing this because it looks very interesting to look at. Now we mess with the white one too. Now we look at that, and from start to finish, that looks more interesting. It is a bit quick, but transitions are fairly quick. That's why it's called a transition. Just to show you the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to go layer new solid, and it can be really any color that you haven't used, save blue, because you can key that out. But I just like green because, I mean, it's a green screen, and we're going to put that at the beginning, and we're going to end up putting that at the bottom. So the green represents the video that you're putting in. What we want to do is we want to unlock the scaling. Go ahead and set this at 20% like the other ones. We want to zoom this out. And remember, at the beginning, we'll go ahead and just set the scale because that represents the video. Now, when this hits about right here, we want to hit this button right here. And what it's basically doing is it's keeping the keyframe the same as this keyframe. So from this time to this time, the keyframe, the scaling stays the same. Now if I were to change any of the numbers, what it's going to be doing is if I go back to this keyframe, say at 50, and this is at 100, it's going to go 50 to 100 between this time, between these two keyframes. So once we have those keyframes set, we're going to go ahead and keyframe the position, and we want to change the position once the white hits the corner. Alright, now we want to bring the green down because that's where the intro hits, and bring it down. And we can go ahead and put the green all the way off the screen. Boom. Really fast, really quick. Like I said, if you want it to be a little bit slower, you mess with the keyframes. You would bring them out to last longer. Now, because each icon looked a little bit different, like for example, filmmaking had the lights and the glowing, that took longer than say photography, which only had 2 flashes and the title of photography moved. And this one had some checks coming out and a little bit of motion with the unboxing and reviews. Again, you got that effect the way it dropped because of easy ease and where the anchor point was located. We're not going to do the exact intro that I have, but we're going to do something similar. We'll go ahead and make a solid and make it black. We're going to go to our effects presets and look up gradient, and we want a gradient ramp, and we'll put this on our solid. And remember how I said to name your layers, because white solid and red solid and black solid and all those solids are kind of hard to look at. So for this, I'm going to make this a similar color scheme to what I did with the other intro, and that was some gray and some black. And we want this to change this to radio ramp. This is just going to make it look circular instead of like a sunset. And we'll go ahead and place that in the middle and make it a little bit bigger. That's fine. And with this, you also have to keyframe this too, because this is where the video hits. You have the transition, position, and scale. I'm going to unlock this, and we're going to make the rotation at 20% to match up with the other layers. And we're going to make this really small and bring this in right here. Then all we have to do is mess with the scale between the two. And let's go ahead and expand it out a little bit because I do see a little bit black on the corner. Scale it out more. Alright, that looks like it's filling up the screen, but the layer messed up my radio gradient. So now you see the green screen, which is the video, goes away, boom, the intro hits. Got the black, which would stay black, and boom. So we're going to end up bringing in an icon. Bring in this red icon. And we'll bring it in about right here, and we're just going to be messing with a scale. And we want to keep it locked. So it's at 0 right now, so you can't see it. We want to move a couple of keyframes and set it back to 100. And you can see it come in. Now with the scaling, I do want to go to keyframe assistant, easy ease, because I do want it to come in longer and zoom up fast. So if we take a look at that right now, you can see how fast it came in. And it actually was a little bit too fast, so let's go ahead and move the keyframes about right here so it doesn't interfere with the red transition. Now another thing what I did was I went 1 frame up and went about 5% more on the scale. And I went another frame and went back to 5. So I went 0%, it went up to 100, 100 to 5, and back to 100. Now if I play that back, it looks like it bounced. You see that? Play it back again. It looked like it did a bounce. We'll just go ahead and add a text. And we'll just call this intro. Once the bouncing hits, the first bounce, that's when we're going to bring in the text. And we'll just do a slide in for the text. So we'll go transform, and we're going to be messing with the position because I like the scale. It looks good. And we'll position it right there and go in a couple frames and bring it back in right there. And now you have your text coming in, and like I said, keyframe assistant, easy ease, go to your graph editor and play around with this. Me, I like to bring this point in, go back, and let's play back, and you see how quick it came in. Now I want to say if I want it to do a little bit bounce, I'll go ahead and go to the next frame, and we want this to move a little bit more to the right. So it's at 782. We'll go ahead and just set this at 790. Go to the next frame and set this back to 782. and then you play it back, and it has a slight bounce to it. It's a little bit hard to see, but if I do this, you can see it move right there a little bit, and it goes back. We'll go ahead and bring in another text, and we'll call this, let's see, motion graphics. And what we want to do is go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. And we want to keep the M big like that, because with motion graphics, different fonts, different text sizes, different positions of the letters makes it look more interesting. So we wanted the motion graphics text to end up about right there. So what we want to do is, let's go ahead and cut this layer because we don't need all that, is when that hits, bounces, we want the motion to keep going. We kind of don't want nothing just to stay still unless it's towards the end or the beginning of an intro. So we want this motion graphics text to stay right there. I like the position. So we're just going to go out a little bit, and we want to go to transform, and we want to mess with the position. This is where we want the keyframe of the text to stay. Now, where we mess with the beginning, we're going to end up bringing it from the bottom of the screen. What we want to do is we want to go back to the last keyframe of the intro text, and we want to bring the position of the motion graphics off the screen. And like I said, once you set one keyframe, the rest of the keyframes will be set automatically. Now, this will end up coming up. Keyframe, easy ease. Let's go to our graph editor. And easy ease is a really great tool to use. I recommend it in any motion graphics. And what we're going to do is, in part of my intro, we use the text to bounce out another text. So that's what we're going to do right here. So we'll go to the next frame. Right now it's at 782. And we want it to go up a little bit, right where you can see they just about touch, which is 773. Now we're going to go back to the next keyframe, and since I didn't know the exact number, what I can do is just copy and paste that keyframe, and it's going to go back to where it was. So you look at motion graphics, it has a little bit bounce to it. So when that bounce hits, when they touch, that gives the intro text a cue to go out of the screen. So before it hits, we want to go back to the intro text and hit this current time button for the position. Now we can move the intro text out of the screen, and we'll go ahead and move it up. Now we play it back. We're going to be messing with the rotation, so we'll set a keyframe that's that, and we're going to end up going a couple of frames ahead, and we're going to turn this at a 90-degree angle. And that just looks like that. And then we're also going to be messing with the scale. So since there's no keyframe for the scale, we'll hit it right there. And we want to keep the scale the same. Go a couple keyframes. And let's go about 170. And let's go ahead and move this position. Now let's bring in another text. Oops. one more text. So it's tutorial. Like I said, you can change scaling, fonts. It looks more interesting when you use variety. You don't always have to stick with one. But we want the scale and position to be where it is right now. We want that to, that's what we want it to end with. But at the beginning, which would be right here, before that hits, we want it to be off the screen because we don't need it there. Then by the time that hits, in motion graphics turns, tutorial comes in, and say we finally want motion graphics to go away once it hits right there. So we go back to the motion graphics text, position, current time, go to the next keyframe, and we'll just move it to the left side. And we want tutorial to come in at the middle. And we'll just set it right about here. So we got motion graphics, tutorial comes in right in the middle. And we do easy ease. And we'll mess with these a little bit. Keep it there for a couple frames for the position. And then we'll go ahead and just zoom in. And you might have to play around with this to make it look like it's in the middle. All the way up until you can't see it. And as that's just about out, we'll go ahead and scale this out all the way like that. And you gotta have another text, maybe a link or something, and you'd basically cut back out to your first transition. We'll go ahead and bring in a couple circles, so let's go ahead and duplicate this twice. We'll go to hue and saturation, and we're gonna end up messing with the color of the same circle, the same red circle. And maybe we want a yellow-ish color. Okay, so we'll keep that right there. We'll set the circle here at 0, which is the yellow circle. And we'll go up a couple keyframes. Just set it back to 100. And we want that bounce, maybe a bigger bounce, so we'll go 110. Next keyframe, go back to 100. Next keyframe, go back to 105, so we're going down 5, making the bounce a little bit smaller, and going back to 100. And we take a look at that, had a big bounce. And what we want to do is go ahead and highlight the keyframes, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and we want to mess with a couple of these. So now we take a look at it, and you have that bounce. We'll go ahead and bring in one more circle, right about the end of the bounce will be the next circle. And we'll end up making it green. So we go to effects, color correction, hue and saturation, and find a green color, because the green is going to represent where the video will come in. So we'll go ahead and set this scale at 0, and we'll go a little bit out to scale it all the way up to fill up the screen. And we can mess with the keyframe. So we'll go ahead and change the composition settings to 5 seconds because we don't need all that extra space. And like I said, the green represents the video as a green screen. I'm going to end up keying that out. The most important thing about this tutorial is I've used everything we talked about in my intro. So I hope that this tutorial helped you out. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you have a question, go ahead and comment below. If you want to know what I'm up to, go ahead and subscribe. Again, I'm Juan Herrera from What a Dork Entertainment. You can follow me on Twitter, and have a great day.